Welcome back to Jared Pro Shot Vids. We're so happy to have Team Canada head coach, Coach Ty, back with us today. He's been running a few days of lessons now. Coach, how many hours did you do today?
Just 11 hours of lessons today, not too bad.
Just 11. And you saved the best for last.
Yes, you.
Yes, obviously. Coach just said I'm the best. We're going to run with that. And we're going to recap our lesson today. It was a little bit busy out on the lanes, lots of open public bowling. It was a little bit difficult to mic ourselves up and do our usual format, but I think this also might work out pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun.
As a little bit of added context, not to make an excuse, but I actually did tear a muscle in my bicep about a month ago. I've been off bowling for that time and off of league, so this is my first time back. Luckily, things felt really good, and it was exciting to get back in the swing of things. So if things look a little bit wonky, I'm going to use that as my excuse. So Ty, just on a very high level, what did we work on today? What did you see after my first couple shots?
Well, I was pleasantly surprised to see the swing that we worked on last time was still really in a good spot. The line was good, the swing slot was good. So really it came down to addressing some new things and one old thing that kind of crept back in. We need to work on the crossover step because it was crossing over too much and the step was just very large, so we wanted to shorten that up and straighten it out so it was more in line. And then you were starting to slide back further from the foul line again, so we had to get you a little closer up again.
Cool. So let's talk about that first one, that crossover step. You mentioned in the lesson you want to kind of move away from that term. Why is that?
So the crossover step is the most common term for that, and I really don't like it because like crossing over implies going past the foot, right? So the crossover step is your first step with your ball side foot. For righties like you, it's your right foot going in front of your left foot. But when you think of crossing over, you think of going past it. Like a crossover strike is not on the head pin, it's left of the head pin for a righty, right? So I like the term inline step because you really want that foot to be in line with the other foot. And you were taking a step that was too long and too far to the left. So we wanted to get that step back in line. We wanted a swing slot that didn't affect your body position in a negative way and keep your swing straight.
So that was the first thing we worked on. Can you talk a little bit about the drill that you had me do in between full approach shots?
So we were doing what's essentially a one-step drill, but using 5 steps. It's a 2-step drill. So you would take one step and then your second step where you do your push away, and that's where your inline step should be. We were working on shortening that up because what we found was because the step is far too long, the direction of the step was pretty good, but because it was too long, it crossed over too far. So by shortening that step, we allowed that foot to move in the same direction, but getting it on the ground earlier put it in line with the foot in front of it. So we're just trying to shorten that second step and get it in line with the left foot to proceed with the rest of the approach.
Right. So we spent about 20 minutes on that. Do you want to talk a little bit about the before and after? I'm sure we're going to overlay it here as we go.
Yeah, so the before and after is pretty good. I mean, it's not perfect, but in 20 minutes of work, it really was a pretty significant improvement. The step shortened by several inches, and instead of being about 3 or 4 boards past where he should be, he was about 1 board off of being in line perfectly where we kind of want to see it. So yeah, it was really good progress for just 20 minutes. If we had worked for a full hour on this, I'm sure we would have had it really where we wanted to be.
So that was our first kind of third of the lesson. The next part we talked about was getting me closer to the foul line. That's something I've always struggled with, and it was a pretty simple solution, I like to think.
Yeah, once the footwork was kind of back in line where we wanted it to be, it's pretty simple to move up on the approach to get closer to the foul line. In some cases, it's a visual or mental hurdle to get closer to the foul line, but for you, I was pretty confident with the work we had just done that we would be able to just move you up on the approach, and that would get you closer to the foul line. For me personally, as a coach, I like to see people no more than about 8 inches from the foul line. Some people, some coaches, some bowlers prefer to be right on top of it. I'm happy if you're like 8-10 inches away, you're not really doing any damage to yourself. If you're more than that, like you were almost 2 feet, then you need to move up. So we got you to about that 8-inch mark. I'd like to get you a little bit closer just so we're kind of not in that danger zone of shrinking back from the foul line again. But overall, like I said, in not a lot of time of work, we wanted to make sure that you didn't re-injure your arm while we were bowling. We got you right up to a really good spot, and that was just a matter of as you get back on the lanes a little bit more, keeping that in mind and working towards, getting more consistently at the foul line.
And for people who it's not so easy as just stepping up, you mentioned sometimes there's a mental hurdle there to get closer. Do you have any tips for those types of bowlers?
So for a lot of people, it's like a visual thing where they see themselves, sliding, but they're 2-3 feet from the foul line. And so visually, if you try to get them closer, they feel like they're much too close to the pins, much too close to the arrows. And it's a bigger challenge than simply moving up on the approach, because what happens is they just shrink their steps to slide where they want to slide. This becomes a bit of a hurdle, and what you need to do there is really force the issue of starting to do release drills and slide drills close to the foul line, just to reacclimatize the eyes and the brain to being that close to the foul line. It's not just a footwork problem or a positioning problem on the approach, it's a mental issue. You want to try to break that little kind of preconceived problem of where they're positioning themselves.
So to wrap up a little bit about the things that we worked on for my physical game, we'll overlay probably the side view here of my beginning and after, if you just want to sum up everything that we're looking at as we show these two shots here.
Yeah, so from the side we can see that the second step is a few inches shorter than it was before, which is a significant improvement, really. It feels like it's not much, but when you consider that a step that is, about 6 inches too long, and you've shortened it by 4 inches in 20 minutes, that's like 66% of the way. That's a really significant improvement. A lot of times bowlers tend to undervalue small changes, incremental changes like that, but that's pretty significant. And it won't take, much to keep working on that and get it into exactly where you want it to be in that right range. And then in terms of getting you up to the foul line, like I said, we got you to about that 8 to 10 inch mark, which is kind of the bare minimum you want to get to. And that didn't take much effort at all, just moving you up on the approach. And continuing to focus on the footwork, and what we were talking about a little bit in the lesson was letting the swing pause a little bit at the top to give time for the slide to happen. And that will get you that much closer and get you into that 4 or 5 inch ranges from the foul line. So you're never going to foul, and you're always going to be using the lane in the most appropriate way.
All right, Ty, so it's great that I get to see you every couple months. It feels like I do a lot better at the end of every lesson.
Yeah.
When I'm seeing you so sporadically, you're on the other side of the country, what are the next steps, especially right after a lesson, to really hammer down those new habits?
Yeah, it's really tough doing lessons when it's kind of sporadic or hit or miss. Even people with coaches close by don't always do lessons more than every couple of months. And that's really not the most effective way to improve quickly. But if you're on your own, you can still keep working on it. The challenge is to stick to it. A lot of times at the end of a lesson, we've seen a lot of great progress, you're full of confidence and think this is fine. And the next time you go to bowl, a lot of bowlers will pick the next thing they want to work on. And unfortunately, the new changes you've just made haven't really been consolidated yet. They're not really muscle memory, so to speak, or automatic. You're still thinking about them, or you still need to be thinking about them. So the next steps for you would be the drills we just did, you could do by yourself or with support of somebody from the shop here, with Jungo, or even your brother could help, just to be the person that kind of gets in front of you and guides that step to remind you of how you need to shrink that second step. The key here is your next lesson or your next session of online bowling, whenever that is, needs to be the same drills we were just doing. Repeat them again. And probably 2 or 3 sessions of continuing that until you're at a point where your second step is consistently the same distance and the same position laterally on the approach every time, and you're not thinking about it. If you are still thinking about it, you're not done yet. It's not time to move on to something else.
The last 10-15 minutes, I kind of wanted to pick your brain about the mental game as I've gotten better physically. I feel like I'm finally at a point where I can start thinking about those things that make me a better, not only league bowler, but also tournament bowler. One of the struggles that I talked about was, we talked about your ideal performance state when you think about a traffic light. You can probably explain it better than I can, but green being you're ultra confident, you feel good. Yellow, you're starting to get a little bit confused, a little bit murky, and red kind of being full stop, everything is hitting the fan.
Yeah.
So for me, when I'm in my green state, I feel like I'm a really good bowler, for lack of a better term. I feel like I can strike with the rest of the guys in the shop here. But as I start to get less confident, I find myself in that yellow and really struggling to get back to that green zone. So I asked for some tips about that.
Yeah, so it's important to understand that the green state, everybody has it no matter what level of player you are, and this is important even as a beginner. Like when you have one of those bowlers that's a 120 average shooting a 160 game or a 170 game, that's them in their green. Does that look like the green for somebody who's an experienced bowler with a 180 average? No, but for them, bowling that many pins over average is definitely them in their best mental performance state. So it's important as a bowler that you recognize when you're bowling your best and the kinds of thoughts and feelings you have about that. And what you've talked about was, kind of going up there, not thinking too much and just thinking, hey, I'm great, I can do this, right? And that's really when you're in your green, and that's kind of what everybody feels like when they're at their best. And then in the yellow, you said, well, how do I get out of that? What happens when I'm a bit confused or doubting myself a bit? And the important thing there is to understand not just the fact that you're in the yellow, which is a really good awareness, but what got you there? because depending on what the trigger was that put you there, it'll be a different thing to get you out of it. So for example, let's say you got frustrated because you're leaving too many corner pins. That's not the same solution as, let's say, missing spares, right? Some people are bothered more by the fact they left a spare. Some people go out of their mind when they miss a spare. So those are two different causes, and you need to recognize what it is that's triggering those yellow states for you, and then you can kind of get a strategy for building out of them.
Exactly, and talking about those triggers that get me in the yellow, for me, I find when I'm green, I'm striking a lot. I don't need to think too much about my ball reaction, but when I start to get into the yellow, it's when I'm throwing shots that I feel are really good off my hand with that same ball that I love, and I'm getting either over-under reaction, bit of a weird carry. So I think once I start to see that, it starts to create some self-doubt for myself.
Yeah, so I think the important thing here to understand is that self-doubt, that's a bit of a mental trick that's being played on you, because the self-doubt shouldn't be translated as, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not a good bowler, like I'm not a good bowler right now. That's not true. You're still the same good bowler you were 10 minutes ago when you had good ball reaction. What's happening is you're just confused about the ball reaction. So you need to still use the positive self-talk of, I'm good at this, I can handle this, I can figure this out, to reframe it into an opportunity to like solve this puzzle. Right? Just like bowling under pressure in the 10th frame. Like, instead of thinking of it as, oh, I need this strike, I have to strike to win, you reframe it as an opportunity to throw your best shot, right? And you can't control the outcome of everything you do. So if you just focus on what you can control, which is kind of your thought process in terms of, how do I solve this puzzle, what ball should I use, how do I move on the lane, or your like outlook in terms of, I can still do this, I've got this. If you can do those two things in that moment you described, you can dig yourself out of the yellow by solving the ball reaction problem versus blaming yourself and thinking that you suck at bowling all of a sudden and kind of going in that deep dark hole.
Right. And then we talked one step further, like you mentioned, clutch shots in the 10th, when you need a double, but when you're in that yellow state, it feels like it's a lot harder, and when you're in the red, it feels like it's impossible to strike. When you're not feeling your best, or if that shot even is the reason you're in the yellow, what do you do there?
So I think the challenge when you're bowling, in a situation where you feel like you've got a strike to win and strike in the 10th or double in the 10th, it's not something that people are just born able to do. It's something that you learn as a skill. And one of the things that I've noticed about bowlers who are really good in the clutch is they have a really good memory for the things or the times when they succeed, and they have a really bad memory for the times when they fail. So they don't think about the times they messed up in the 10th. They only remember how good they are when they've done well in the 10th. And even if you don't have many opportunities to strike in the 10th, if you can just think about all the times you've struck just because you're a good bowler and you've struck before, that can be the memory and the foundation of some confidence and some belief in those moments. And if you have a short memory, the whole Ted Lasso be a goldfish thing of when you've messed up, then that's even better, because then you don't have that kind of eating at your confidence when it does happen, because it's going to happen to the best of us.
So to wrap, kind of in the same way we wrap the physical game, the next steps when working on mental game aren't as black and white.
No, and like for you in terms of the chat we had, the next steps for you would be, we identified at least one thing that puts you in the yellow. What you want to do from there is write it down. Write the things that are causing you to be in the yellow, the feelings they cause, and what about the way you're behaving when that happens. So for example, let's say you're in the green, you're standing around, you're chatting, you're jovial, you're having a good time, and then when you get into the yellow, you're sitting down and you're quiet.
Right.
Well, guess what? The sitting down and quiet sends a signal to your brain that, wait, something's not right. If you go and kind of behave in the way that you do in the green, standing around, talking to people, while you're still confused, it sends a signal to your brain, I might be confused, but everything's still okay. So you want to write these things down, the notes of how you behave when you're bowling your best, how you behave when you're kind of maybe a bit confused, to be aware of when you're getting into that yellow state, and then also how you can kind of trick your brain into thinking, no, I'm fine, I'm good, by using some of that green state behavior.
Right. And I think one of the things that I'm grateful about when we have these lessons, when we chat, is there's a lot of these little tidbits that I would have never realized on my own. And kind of the way technology connects us all also allows for more frequent chats.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's where these kinds of lessons can be a problem. Like I said at the very beginning of this, I was surprised when I came here and your swing was exactly where I left it, 6 months ago. It's not common that happens when you don't have necessarily the direct coaching support. And that's kind of why I've started kind of a remote coaching where it allows regular access. So we can do regular video analysis, and the conversations about the mental game can happen. You can list out some of these, here my yellow and my green triggers and all the stuff, and I can talk to you about that, and we can dive into it remotely, via messages, via videos, whatever it is, and you can grow and learn faster that way. And that's where kind of my thought process of lessons work in the moment, but you need follow-up, and you need professional coaching follow-up. And so that's why I've started doing this remote coaching to offer that to bowlers who are committed to improving, because if we do this every 6 months, you're going to get better. But if we do this every week, you're going to get better much faster.
So Coach Ty, you've worked with everyone from people picking up their first bowling ball to the world's best bowlers, getting to work with Frankie, to a less extent Jung-ho. But with those things in mind, you mentioned virtual coaching and those opportunities to work with what I would say is one of the best coaches in the world. Who are the types of bowlers that would benefit from something like that?
I mean, I'm honestly willing to work with anybody who's going to put the time in and put the work in. It's a two-way street when it comes to really good coaching. The best relationships that I have with athletes are with athletes who put in all the work and want to get better and want to reach out and talk. That's the experience that I've had with the Team Canada athletes. The ones who are the most engaged are the ones who improve the quickest. And for me, it's not so much a question of what kind of bowler it is in terms of quality and average and stuff like that. It's more, are you willing to put in the work? Do you want to get better? Are you committed to achieving your goals? Then I will help you achieve them, right? If you're going to say, I want to do this, but I can only practice once a month. Well, not that I can't help you, but I can only do so much if you can only practice once a month.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Something I'm definitely going to be taking advantage of in the near future. If you're interested in working more with Coach Ty and getting really serious about improving your bowling game like I have over the past couple years, use the link down in our description below, and we do have a special promo code up on the screen that will give you a discount as well. Thanks for the discount, Ty. Appreciate it. So thanks again to Coach Ty, making the long trek out here to BC. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed, and I hope you're enjoying this series. We've had quite a few installments of it now. So leave a comment down below. What's something that you're working on right now, whether that's physical game, mental game. We'll do our best to answer and provide some tips and helpful advice down there. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next vid.